Hello everybody, welcome back to From Rhythm to Algorithm. It's a rather snowy day here in Columbus, Ohio, getting ready to go to my cousin's wedding. And then would I have thought that I would still be at my parents' house deriving mathematics 7 years or 8 years after complete unification? No, not really, but nothing else to do but besides keep moving on with our current derivation. And so really just at this point trying to figure out and isolate a given specific question that pulls forth what is sensorality. How does discreteness affect cyclicity? Right? We're independent objects. My pen is independent of me. I am independent of my chair. We're all connected. Nothing is physically touching. So when something cycles, like a bicycle, and that gear goes around, right? There's always, again, point being is there's always some amount of inefficiency. Because of our geometry and because of discreteness, things aren't exactly congruent. Things don't map one-to-one. Isomorphisms don't really exist. In other words, everything is infinitely unique. Life is special. And special generalizes to speciality. So we're really just doing this logical dance between speciality and sensorality, when in reality, it's just this unique sequence of letters that will give us our stabilizing theorem, which science team already knows, which is super fun. What is the relationship of iteration and cycling? Because again, iteration to me is just something is set, something is fixed. Cycling is dynamic, it changes. And the mathematical terminology, your base and your range, right? Your base is set, your range, your application is infinite. You buy a stock, you can literally say right there, you have an infinite profit potential. The stock, it can go up to whatever, right? If you have something, you can increase 100%, 200%, 300%, but if you have something, you can't decrease more than 100%. We've gone over all of those limits, just bringing anything back up that comes to mind. Clinging grasps, understanding grasps. Last episode we talked about, is mathematics discovered or invented? Neither are the correct word, right? You understand the world around you, and then you articulate how that world works, which is mathematics. And so the big word there is understanding. Bias is affinic, right? Affinity is proclivity, is inclination. Sensorality is affinicality. Finicky is janky. What is the relationship of irreducibility and invincibility? Right? If you have a young male, they'll typically say, oh, I feel invincible, which for the historical record was never me. I was more poignantly aware that you can die just by some happenstance bullshit than probably anybody else. And so it'll be easy to look back and be like, oh, he got shit done. But it was like, I was just a cog in a wheel for a long, long time. But invincibility and irreducibility, you can't break things down. And invincible, you think you can't be broken. Clearly, some linguistical letter similarity, but irreducibility and invincibility. What is the relationship of change and angularity? All right. If we have these discrete objects, they're all independent. How do you really form an angle? Right. Then you have the interior angles versus exterior angles. And so both of those, again, then you get concavity. Right? Are you inside a system or are you outside of a system? And then how does that change? But again, just literally trying to isolate this question. Again, change is dynamic. That's another very general word. And an angle is a relationship. What is an angle? A relationship between two objects, the degree of difference between two objects. Again, words have meaning. You can't break things down past a certain point, and our conceptualizations are all consistent. Sensorality is mathematicality. Thematicality, thesis. Masculinity, femininity. And if I don't, again, continue on with anything else, I'm just calling out these dichotomies, these fundamental stabilities of two that have been forced to the front of memory of our species. Knowledge, right? Last episode's titled Knowledge, right? What is knowledge? It's an amalgamated word. We have know, K-N-O-W, and ledge, right? A ledge is an edge. Again, that edge is some sort of geometric relationship with the sandwich between two E's. Because then again, the concept of completeness applying to words, right? I don't know what else to say there right now. Again, just literally trying to pull all of this logic together. All of the videos you've seen previously, trying to stuff it all into one, and it's just I need the right conceptual framework to simply state the answer. Sourcinality is regality. And this is something I was out on a hike the other day, and I go into just a state park lobby area with a bathroom, and on the toilet, and you'll see this if you're in the United States, it says Regal. It's some sort of brand. But sourcinality is regality. So now I can guarantee you every single time you see the iterations of the letter E and A in that order, such as Regal, you can think, or you will think, sinality, or at least once it's proven, you'll see this immediately, because it's popping out to me. And so once I have the conceptualization in the right, it'll just be undeniable and it'll be done. But what is regality? Privilege. It's right. Regality is royalty. Right. If you're royal, you're regal. How do scenes relate to themes? Right. If you have a movie scene, right, is there a theme to that? Again, very clear sound and linguistics relevance. But seem, theme, and scheme. Right. All words very clearly built really close. In theme now being the identified derived basis of all of mathematics. All right, so what is a theme? Again, a recurring theme is a motif, but is that redundant? Right, it's just a theme. Does a theme have to, do you have to have recurrence to have a theme? Doesn't really matter, again, trying to find this right question, because all of these open questions, that they're not complete, right? You have all of these fractions of words and fractions of logic that help you do stuff, they're operative, but they're not complete. We're looking for this completeness, and then it will show this differentiation. Quintessentiality epitomizes. Sensorality is sensuality. Is rhetoric redundant? All right, if you ask a rhetorical question, it's not meant to be answered. The logic is self-contained, which is kind of what we're doing. Right? We're either forming this false knot or we're asking this rhetorical question. Clearly we're building logic. As always, the answer will present itself when it does. But is rhetoric redundant? I would say rhetoric is stylistic. Rhetoric is a literary technique. I would say rhetoric is a technique. But is it redundant? No, I would just say no, it's a way of highlighting something. But redundancy, you do something again and again and again. But is anything redundant if everything is time dependent? Right? Me today in 5 seconds before is different than me right now, which is going to be different than me in the future, which just happened, and now it's 5 seconds ago. And so everything is infinitely unique. So does redundancy really exist? I guess logically, if you just say the same things over again, if I say the sky is blue, like some amount of time passed, but was that different logically? So you can have logical redundancies, but I still don't think rhetoric. Yeah, what is rhetoric? Miss Odie, get out of my head, Miss Odie. But a rhetorical question is not answered, and rhetoric to me is just a literary style. But redundancy is repetitive, and we just kind of discussed what came to mind there. Sensorality is knowledgeable, right? Knowledgeability. And another very clear amalgamated word where you just put able, knowledgeable. It's kind of slapping another word on there. I derived a ledge as an edge twice. That's fun. Because remember, this is all consistent. Like you can't just derive infinite theorems off of everything else. There's just a lot more than anybody has seen before. Equation, adequate. Sufficiency is adequate. Sensorality is adequatality. Again, those A, right, when you have something that ends in ATE, and you chop off the E, and then you go ATA, it's always very cumbersome. What can we say about that? Sensorality is equatoriality. Sensorality is territoriality. Sorality is toriality. What is toriality? And we've identified, because again, these basis is set. So these base words don't change. But then they have to stabilize somehow. Right? Because you can clearly break down any word into its letters. And then you can break down any letter and say it represents a sound. And then the sound is the consistent part. But the sound emerges because you have discrete objects moving. What am I trying to ask here? I don't know. Essentiality is necessarity. Again, clearly you can see the essentiality. Oh, come on, Gus, man. We have our visiting scholar. We're almost done, so we're not going to pause. Essentiality is necessarity. Sodality concedes. So I'm not really sure where I pulled that sodality, but doesn't really matter. Sensorality is sodality. Cedality. I think we've talked about this, or we should, because again, we're reiterating these things. All of these things I've derived before, literally all of them. There's no more conceptualizations, intuitive processes for me to realize. So we have to do this huge logical dance just to make any sort of quote-unquote progress. But elastic versus inelastic collisions. If you get exposed to Newtonian mechanics, is anything truly, can you have a complete, and that's, you'll get the word complete in there. Can you have a complete, is, first of all, elasticity, right? Are objects deformable? And because you have this internal mass gap, all objects can be deformed. If I press on something, right, you're never going to touch, you're always going to have gaps between the electrons. It's always, all objects are compressible. And so therefore you don't have any truly, when they say completely inelastic collisions, meaning there's no elasticity, there's no deformation, there's no loss of energy, those don't exist, does not exist. And so that pops up quite a bit, but again, we've derived elasticity in its entirety. And so sensorality is elasticality. So I'm pretty sure this finalizing solution or resolution is we're going from an ility to an ality. Because again, we're jumping back and forth. Ality to ility is a limiting case, and then ility to ality. Again, we're not changing the logic, we're just iterating the letters. And we already have the forms of the solutions. So I'm pretty sure, again, it doesn't really matter for me to guess, but just I'm talking you through the logic as it comes to me. Because I've already done this, and it's still like, because all words have these feelings for me, I feel like I'm a fish out of water all day. And these periods last for years. So it's torture. Like I said, I'm being tortured. Not the point, hilariously. In what universe can you say, I'm being tortured, here's the law, please someone stop it, and then nobody cares? That's the one we live in. And so there are no elasticity, everything is elastic. All objects have some sort of deformability. So sensorality is elasticality. What is procrastination to discreteness? It might seem like two words that aren't really related, but all language is related, right? All language is a reduction, it's a differentiation, it's a limit. So procrastination to discreteness, right? Starting and stopping something. That's the big, right? Whether it's an acceleration, that's where the interesting things happens when you start and stop. How about on a personal level? Or you procrastinate, you keep putting something off. It's really the starting. Like once you start doing something, it's very easy to wait for it and get into a rhythm. But it's the act of starting, and it has some facet to discreteness. Independent objects, you have to get the ball rolling. That's literally the phrasing for the intuition I'm talking about. Because remember, we're still connecting cliches. It's not going to be some threading the needle through some super logical thing. It's just going to be another word that everyone already knows. And it's just going to be a form of sensorality. Why can't this thing pop out? Because I know the science team already has the answer. How does intention relate to meaning, right? When people get into heated arguments, they say what they mean. There's a phrase, a drunk mind speaks sober thoughts or whatever. But can you hear intention? Right? What is intention to meaning? Do people say what they mean, right? You say what you think and do what you mean. Right? Now, relating it back to these logical statements that are true that I happen to have derived. And so you say what you think, you do what you mean. Does intention have meaning? Yes. And so intention, is more basic and more fundamental than words. And so whether it's an action, right? If you can see the intention of your dog, if it's trying to like jump up or if it's trying to, whimper or whatever, not even vocalization, but just like it's posture. You can see the intention of an animal. And so how does intention relate to meaning? I would say they're proportional, or meaning represents intention, is what I would say. Is memory unlimited, right? Do I have any limits, right? When you learn something, it genuinely feels, well, that's what we're talking about. It takes, 7 years to construct a math proof. It takes like 2 hours to listen to or more than that, but like maybe 12 hours of actual derivation, and then the final reduction, which we're not at yet, but does exist for speciality, you could like literally like learn it in like 5 seconds. It's like less than that, because words already have meaning. We're just building up the logic to state a solution. And so you might say memory is unlimited, but it's not, right? You're limited by your death, right? If you're dead, you're not, producing more memory, producing more information. So trying to package all of this logic up into a very simple question. And now we're going to end this episode with, right, because this difference, whatever sensorality pairs to, it's going to be completely obvious. We're just trying to get our concepts in the right place. Right? Sensorality differentiates sentience, right? There's a difference between, we have the word plant for plants, and people for people, and dog for dog, and animals for animals. Are human beings animals? Right? So this differentiation of sentience or differentiation of sensorality is already made within sentience. Just looking for that right question. Anyway, thank you for watching, and I will see you on the next one.